If you operate any sort of high ticket service based business, you already know that there's always a debate going around between departments, whether it's a marketing problem or a sales problem, as to why deals aren't closing. And let me be the first to tell you that 99% of the time, it's a clear marketing problem. And in this video, I'm going to be explaining exactly why marketing always supersedes sales and the exact pre-call system that you can integrate inside your high ticket business to ensure that the sales team can just collect cash on autopilot and you can let the marketing actually do the work for you. Now, before I go into more detail on exactly how this pre-call marketing system works, I want to quickly explain exactly how a typical high ticket business operates without the system, especially if they're trying to book in a sales call, initial consultation, or even an investment briefing for their business or company. So typically with the businesses that I see, most of the teams that are currently operating, they'll have the prospect book in via Calendly or any other scheduling tool. So it'll look like this, and there's nothing inherently wrong with this. But what will happen is typically the prospect will book out 72 hours in advance. So like, let's say for example, the call is or the prospect sees this Calendly on April 1st, they might book in on April 4th or even next week on April 6th if you're not operating on the weekend, for example. And in that time period, though the call is 72 hours out, that prospect is essentially getting no sort of content explaining who you are or what you offer. So they're not getting any emails, no videos, no outreach, no nurture sequence. And this is exactly why when the sales call actually happens, that prospect ends up showing up cold. They don't trust you. They're full of objections. And then that deal doesn't close, or you have to end up scheduling a follow-up where you're now extending the sales cycle 30, 60, or even 90 days out. So again, we definitely don't want to extend the sales cycle longer than it has to be. So what we're going to do is implement this pre-call system that allows us to pre-educate and pre-nurture the prospect prior to the sales call. So again, your sales team can just focus on closing on autopilot rather than having to fight objections over and over and wondering why deals aren't closing. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is look at what's happening after someone books in a call. So this is basically the 24 to 72 hour period prior to the sales call and after they actually book in a meeting. So just like normal, like we had with any other typical team, they'll book in a call, and we still use Calendly. That's probably like the best appointment scheduling tool out there. But in this case in particular, what you'll notice is that we only allow the prospect to book out 48 hours in advance. And so if you look at the typical team structure, especially like for the Calendly in particular, what you'll see is like typical teams, how they'll operate is they'll allow the prospect to book out 10 days in advance, for example. So what you want to do is make sure you don't do that, because let's say, for example, the prospect comes to the calendar on April 1st, they can then book in a call on April 11th, and that's way too much time in between. We don't want to optimize for that long of a period outside, the actual booking window. What we want to do is optimize for a 48 to 72 hour period, because let's say, for example, it's April 1st, they book in on April 11th. That's way too much time. They might lose urgency. They might forget who you are. They're going to show up even colder. So again, make sure that whenever you are optimizing this, that you optimize it for a 48 to 72 hour period. So after the call's been booked, the first thing that you're going to want to do is send them to a thank you page. So typically with teams, what they'll do is, let's say, for example, they fill out this Calendly here, they'll just send them to this page in particular. Then right after they book in a call, they don't get redirected anywhere. So this is exactly where the prospect, in their eyes and in their mind, they're super, super warm. They want to learn more information about who you are, what you offer, etc. So what we want to do is basically send them to a thank you page or confirmation page explaining what the next steps are along the process for that 48 to 72 hour period. So in that thank you page, what we're going to want to do is auto redirect them. So you can actually set up the automation inside Calendly to auto redirect them after they book in. And then basically that thank you page just needs to tell the prospect next steps and then get their questions answered prior to the sales call. And so on this page in particular, it's extremely important that we structure the page in a way that's easily consumable or digestible for the prospect, so that way they don't get overwhelmed even before the sales call happens. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to implement a post-booking video. So this is just a basic quick 2-minute video. It doesn't have to be long by any means. It's going to be from the founder themselves, actually speaking to the camera, telling them next steps, and more importantly, actually telling them how to use the page itself. And so here's a quick example of exactly what that looks like. Essentially on this call confirmation page or thank you page in particular, it just calls out and says, hey, your call confirmation has been emailed to you, and before the call, here's what to know. We put this together so you know exactly what to expect, and watch the video below, check out the results, etc. So what they're going to do is they're going to watch this video here that's going to be scripted out for them. And in that video in particular, it's just going to explain how to actually navigate the page below. That's the whole entire premise, right? We don't want to overwhelm them and give them too much information right off the get-go on what to do with the page. make them watch that first video, make sure that the copy resonates to just watch that first video and let the video do the explaining. By the way, if you're actually interested in implementing any of these systems, feel free to click the first link in the description. But besides that, the next thing that we want to do is essentially, now that they've consumed the actual first post booking video, we want to explain what the next steps are and actually get their questions answered, right? So what we're going to then do is have short breakout videos that are going to be right below that video. And these are basically short videos that pre-handle every common question or objection prior to the sales call. So it looks a little something like this. This is right below the post-booking video. And so this was, for example, a fitness offer. So with the questions that we're answering, it's like, how is this different from physical therapy? What results can I expect? What does a typical training session look like? Do I need it to be, local, or is it completely online? Again, these are really, really common objections, but if you can answer this prior to the sales call, it allows your sales team to just focus on cash collection rather than handling objections that actually should have been basically pre-handled from the marketing itself. And if you're wondering actually how we're getting these questions, the biggest thing that we actually implement is we basically every 30 days review all the sales calls, transcripts, find the questions that are repeating or are persistent across the calls, and then turn those exact same questions that occur into the breakout videos. And this is exactly how the marketing process is actually feeding the sales process, right? So a lot of people go in blind, they're wondering why deals aren't closing, but they're not actually using that data from the sales call. Again, the actual sales call recordings and those transcripts, those are the absolute most valuable tool that you have in your business when it comes to sales and marketing, because you can get quick feedback and you have a loop to be able to actually improve things when it comes to the customer or client journey. And so now that they've consumed most of the actual call confirmation page, so this post-booking video here just explaining next steps and what to expect, as well as all of these breakout videos here, there's a couple of other things that we want to implement on the page to ensure that we have a high show rate and people are actually showing up to the call. So the next thing that we want to implement is just a quick screenshot showing people how to accept the calendar invite. Now, this may sound really, really redundant, or you may think everyone knows how to press yes on a calendar invite, right? But you'd be surprised. A lot of people are inherently stupid, just to be, as transparent as possible. They don't understand exactly how to go about things in the right way. And with your marketing process in particular, it needs to be focused on direct response and actually making sure that the prospect follows directions. So just having a quick screenshot like this, even with the cursor, just showing them to click yes, makes it so much easier for them, because you'll be very, very surprised, especially if you're running at scale, you have paid traffic running on the back end. You want to make sure that every single aspect of your customer journey is optimized, and you're basically telling the prospect exactly what to do prior to the call. And then the last thing that you want to make sure that you implement inside of the thank you page / call confirmation page is the actual phone number of the sales rep that's going to reach out, or the phone number from the automated CRM text that goes out after they book in a sales call. You're gonna wanna make sure to put the full phone number, including the country code and area code, so that way there's a level of familiarity with the prospect. Because think about it, let's say, for example, you get a telemarketing call, 99% of the time you're hanging it up, especially if you don't recognize the number. So if we can basically put that number on the screen and just tell them, hey, this is the number that's going to be reaching out to you, it's gonna allow them to actually understand that, hey, this is a number that I actually, am familiar with, and I'm willing to actually respond and engage with this person. Now, displaying the actual phone number that's going to reach out to the prospect is the last major thing that's part of this thank you page. Now, what we have to understand is that this is still a front-facing asset to the prospect. So this is exactly what they're consuming and what they're going to get access to right after they book a call. Again, from this exact same trigger from Calendly. So just to reiterate, they're going to get the post-booking video, they're going to get the breakout videos, they're going to get the calendar invite, and then also the number. But to go in a little bit more detail when it comes to the actual rep's number or who's reaching out, we want to, again, ensure that from this exact same call trigger where they end up booking in a call, not only are they getting redirected to a thank you page, but this is exactly where the automations are going to fire out. And there's a couple automations that are going to be super, super important for us to understand. The first thing that's firing on the back end is going to be the confirmation email. So with this email in particular, it's just designed to give them the Google Meet or Zoom link, show them next steps, actually give them a little bit of information on how to prep for the call. Like, for example, show up in a quiet environment, make sure you know your numbers, make sure that you're honest about your current situation, etc. And then we might also, in that same confirmation email, send them the VSL link. So the VSL is just going to be a video sales letter, maybe 8 to 15 minutes long, just explaining who it is that you are, what you offer, why your offer is better than competitors, etc. And so with this, first email that's going out, this is going to be, again, extremely important, because it's going to set the tone for the rest of the emails that are going to go out in this process as well. We're not just going to send one email or just some generic reminder emails. We want to make sure that, again, we send value-packed and dense emails as part of our back-end selling system. Now, this leads me into the second automation that's happening on the back end, which is going to be the value dense emails that are going to be going out every single day. So some teams that I see usually send 3 to 4 per day. I've seen other teams send 8 or even 9 emails per day. Now you may think that sounds like a lot, but as long as you're actually providing value and they're educational, what we've seen is that the open rates typically don't decline the more you send emails. Prospects actually prefer it because it allows them to get all of their questions answered, again, prior to the sales call. So with the value dense emails in particular, what we want to do is we can start with maybe 3 to 4 per day, see where the open rates are at, and then we can basically increase it over time as long as the open rates don't continue to decline. So with these emails, what we want to do is make sure that the prospect understands who you are, what you offer, why you're better than other competitors, what are the case studies that you have, and more importantly, we can also send YouTube links which serve as long form sales assets to, again, have the prospect know, like, and trust you. Because at the end of the day, the only way that the prospect will actually purchase your high ticket service is if they, again, know, like, and trust you, and they're actually willing to work with you ultimately long term as well. And again, these aren't generic reminders by any means. This is our only chance to actually get in front of the prospect consistently before the call and educate them on the offer. So again, like I mentioned before, with the sales calls and the sales team that you're currently running right now, they might be hopping on the call and then you got to run through 10 different things, answer a bunch of questions, and now you've spent 45 minutes to an hour doing the discovery rather than actually closing. So what we want to do is, again, with these emails, just answer all those questions prior so that way your sales team doesn't have to be on the calls just educating. Their main job, again, is just to collect cash on autopilot. And more importantly, with these YouTube links that I mentioned earlier, these can be the exact same format as your value dense emails, but with you just talking to the camera. Because think about it, not every single prospect learns the same. Some prospects might end up reading, or they like reading emails, for example, while other prospects might actually like absorbing the content via YouTube or seeing your face on camera. And so regardless of what it is, we want to actually optimize for both client or customer journeys. And again, with these videos in particular, the entire premise is that they can serve as long form sales assets that build trust and authority prior to the sales call. Because again, think about it. If they sit in front of their phone and watch you for 30 minutes to an hour, just going over what it is that you do, what you offer, why you're better than competitors, the exact same stuff, again, that's inside of these value dense emails, they're just more likely to actually get closer to making that buying decision. And again, this doesn't actually come from me. There's an entire study by Google. You can look it up. It's called the 7-11-4 principle. And basically what this says is that in order for a prospect to make a high ticket buying decision greater than 5K, you typically need 7 hours of exposure, 11 meaningful touch points, and 4 hours of content, for example, via YouTube, before they actually purchase your high ticket offering. So this is just a quick example. Again, you don't have to follow all of these numbers, verbatim, but even if you give 30 minutes of value or an hour of value, the prospect is just more likely to actually be closer to making that buying decision. And an easy way to make sure that prospects actually consume these YouTube videos is, again, you can just send it in the exact same value dense emails that are going out. So like for some partners, what we do is we'll basically explain a specific topic in the email because, again, they're value dense. They're not generic reminders. So at the very end of the email, what we do is, hey, if you want some more information about XYZ topic, feel free to check out this quick video explaining it in detail. And that's going to be an easy way for, again, the prospect to actually consume that video. And just to continue down the rest of the automations that are going to trigger from this process, the next thing that we want to do is ensure that the entire team gets a Slack notification as soon as that call is booked, and also have an SDR or anyone on your team actually reach out to that lead to ensure that we start the nurture process. And so what that looks like in practice is we'll make sure that the Slack notification goes out to ensure that the entire team knows that the call has been booked, and so that everyone's aligned. And now we can actually have the SDR or whoever it is that's managing, the pipeline inside of your team to actually reach out with speed to lead, and they can act immediately. So with SDRs in particular, the outreach is actually everything, because what we can do now is send a blue text message. Again, it wouldn't be a green text message. It's an actual real iPhone, a real person reaching out. And now what we can do is have a quick conversation with that lead prior to the call, and again, answer any questions that they might have. And this is also a really, really good time to confirm that they're showing up, but also send over the YouTube video links as well. So let's say, for example, in that quick text message conversation, they're mentioning that they're having XYZ problem. We can then send them a specific YouTube video answering that, problem, or showing them a little bit more about a possible solution for that problem. So again, they can know, like, and trust the founder and the offer prior to the call happening. And honestly, you'd be fairly surprised as to how successful the blue iMessage text messages are compared to the generic green SMS messages that go out from a CRM. Because with those messages in particular, the prospect can read into that, right? This has been a game that's been going on for many, many years. And whenever they see green text messages that are automated on the exact hour, then they know that that's just an automation, right? Whereas if you actually reach out to that lead, take the extra 5 to 10 minutes to reach out, that's going to simply increase the show rate by 15 to 20% and also increase the close rate again by 10 to 20%. And these are the little details that are going to make the biggest difference when it comes to the actual buying decision of any sort of prospect. And so the last thing that we want to automate as part of our backend process is going to be the pipeline movement in the CRM. So this is extremely important because if we don't have proper CRM hygiene, a lot of leads are going to fall through the cracks and we're not going to be able to follow up with those leads later. Let's say, for example, we're spending $50 to $75 per qualified lead and maybe a couple $100 for a book call. Regardless of this entire, back-end selling system and marketing process, leads are still going to fall through the funnel, right? That's just inevitable. But people might want to actually purchase your high ticket product or service, maybe 30, 60, or even 90 days later. But if we haven't tracked where they are in the CRM, it's going to be impossible to actually follow up with that lead correctly based on where they ended up last. And if we've already spent money for that qualified lead and booked call, we are literally, just lighting money on fire at that point. So extremely important that we have proper CRM hygiene here. And so you can probably tell how this entire pre-call system, especially with the thank you page, as well as the automations firing on the back end, allows us to actually push the prospect closer to making a buying decision rather than extending the sales cycle longer than it has to be, especially compared to the prior system where you just send the prospect to a generic Calendly link and then hope they show up to the call 72 hours later, right? That's not really going to work. So I hope this kind of makes sense. Again, the entire premise of this system is to make sure that the prospect is pre-sold on you as the founder as well as your offering, so that way you can end up closing that deal. So again, hope this helps you kind of implement some stuff as far as your marketing systems go, so that way you don't have to blame your closers over and over as to why deals aren't closing. Simply implement this and you're going to increase your book rate, your show rate, and your close rate. And also, if you want some help actually implementing some of these systems, feel free to book in a call with me. It's the first link in the description. Other than that, I'm going to be posting a lot more videos just like this one, so be sure to subscribe and I'll catch you on the next one.